beginning of any great transformation, there comes a moment when the familiar world begins to crumble. You look around at the routines you once clung to, the people you thought would be permanent, the habits you relied on for comfort, and suddenly they no longer fit. It feels as though the ground beneath your feet is shifting, and no matter how tightly you try to hold on, the structures that once defined your life are dissolving. This is the shattering of the old self, a necessary breaking apart of what you believed you were in order to make room for who you are becoming. It rarely feels gentle. More often than not, it feels like chaos, confusion, and even loss. But this very unraveling is the first signal that a quantum jump is underway. At first, it can seem like a series of small disruptions. Maybe friendships begin to fade without explanation. Maybe the job that once seemed stable suddenly feels unbearable, or opportunities you depended on disappear. Perhaps your body itself begins to react, with exhaustion or restlessness you can't explain. These are not accidents. They are the natural cracks forming in the shell of the old reality. Just like a seed cannot become a tree without breaking its own outer layer, you cannot step into the next version of yourself without a dismantling of what no longer serves you. During this stage, your mind often fights the hardest. The ego loves consistency. Even if that consistency is misery, it will whisper to you that change is dangerous, that uncertainty is a threat, that you should stay in what is known even if it suffocates you. Yet deep inside, you know that the pull you feel is more than restlessness. It is the soul's call for expansion. The disintegration of the old patterns is not meant to punish you, but to free you from the invisible prison of familiarity. When your life starts to feel like it no longer makes sense, when the things that once felt solid become fragile, it is because your energy is already detaching from the old timeline. This detachment often feels disorienting. You may feel as if you're floating between worlds, unable to fully connect with the old yet not firmly planted in the new. It is a liminal space, a threshold where the past is dissolving but the future has not fully formed. Many people mistake this feeling for failure. They believe something is wrong with them, that they have lost their way. But in truth, this is the exact terrain of transformation. You are not broken. You are simply in the process of recalibration. Your frequency is rising, and the people, places, and circumstances that vibrate at the old level cannot remain in your orbit. In this stage, confusion becomes your teacher. The lack of clarity forces you to stop relying on external markers of identity. Who are you without the title you once had? Without the relationship you once leaned on? Without the habits that kept you numb? The stripping away of the old self forces you to see what is real beneath the layers of roles and stories. It is uncomfortable, sometimes even painful, because it feels like you are being emptied out. But this emptiness is sacred space. It is the void from which the new self will be born. There will be moments where you try to cling to what is leaving. You may chase old connections, desperate to bring them with you. You may hold on to routines that no longer nourish you, trying to squeeze meaning from them. But the more you resist, the heavier it feels. The truth is that nothing in your life is disappearing by accident. Every collapse, every ending, every unraveling is part of a precise design. Life is not taking from you. It is clearing the space so that the new reality can enter. Sometimes the shattering comes in dramatic form. A breakup, a job loss, a sudden change that shakes you awake. Other times it happens slowly, like a quiet erosion of interest and energy, until you realize one day that the person you have been no longer exists. Either way, the process is the same. The old self is dissolving. The neural pathways that once dictated your thoughts are loosening their grip. The emotional attachments that once defined your choices are being challenged. The version of you that was built from survival, from conditioning, from fear, is cracking open so that a higher version can emerge. What makes this stage so challenging is that the mind wants answers, and during this time, answers are scarce. You may feel like you're in the dark, fumbling for something solid to hold on to, but the very absence of certainty is the medicine. It is teaching you to trust without proof, to lean into the unknown without demanding evidence. This is how the old programming begins to dissolve. By not having something familiar to cling to, You are forced to develop a new center, one that is internal, rather than external. The most important thing to understand is that chaos is not the enemy. It is the signal. When everything feels out of order, it is because order is being rewritten at a higher level. Imagine a puzzle being taken apart, piece by piece. For a while it looks like destruction. The picture you once knew disappears. But without the breaking apart, there would be no way to create a new image. Your life is undergoing the same process. It may not look beautiful yet, but the dismantling is necessary for the masterpiece to take shape. This is why the stage of shattering is often accompanied by feelings of loss. You may grieve people, places, or versions of yourself that no longer align. Grief is not weakness here. It is evidence of your growth. Every ending carries an emotional weight, and honoring that grief allows you to release it fully. The danger is not in grieving but in clinging. When you cling to the fragments of what is gone, you anchor yourself to a reality that no longer exists. When you allow the grief to move through you, you release the energy tied to the old timeline, making room for the next. What feels like destruction is actually precision. Life removes only what cannot go with you. The friendships that fade, the jobs that crumble, the identities that no longer fit, all of it is being recalibrated to match the frequency of the reality you are stepping into. Nothing leaves your life unless it is blocking your expansion. This understanding turns the chaos into clarity. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to see the deeper question, "What is this clearing space for?" That shift in perspective is the first real step toward aligning with the new timeline. And so the shattering continues, piece by piece, dismantling the old architecture of your identity. You feel naked, vulnerable, sometimes even lost. But beneath it all, something extraordinary is taking shape. You may not see it yet, but the new frequency is already forming around you. The old self must die so the new self can live. This stage is not the end. It is the sacred beginning, the gateway through which every quantum leap must pass. When the old structures of your life begin to fall away, the next phase that arrives feels entirely different. It is as though the universe suddenly presses its hand against your back and begins to push you forward at a speed you didn't anticipate. You begin to notice that events, conversations, and opportunities unfold at a pace that feels accelerated, almost as if time itself has shortened its rhythm. The days seem to move quicker, and moments that used to drag are suddenly gone before you can grasp them. What you once thought would take years to achieve starts to reveal itself in weeks or even days. This is the quickening, the stage where energy builds momentum and the new timeline begins to show its power. It is exhilarating, but it can also be disorienting, because your inner and outer worlds are both in motion at a speed that leaves little room for hesitation. In this stage, you often begin to notice synchronicities stacking on top of each other. Numbers repeat on clocks. A song plays at the exact moment your mind drifts to a certain memory. A stranger says the very phrase you had been thinking about moments before. These signs are not coincidences. They are the threads of a new reality weaving itself in front of your eyes. They are signals that you are no longer in the density of stagnation, but in the current of flow. Energy is faster, sharper, and more responsive. Your intentions manifest quicker, but so do your fears. This is why awareness becomes critical. Every thought, every feeling carries a charge, and that charge is magnified in this phase. It is like walking into an amplifier that doubles whatever sound you put into it. Whisper doubt, and it grows louder. Whisper hope, and it echoes into miracles. As the quickening unfolds, you may feel a sense of restlessness. Your body senses the acceleration before your mind fully comprehends it. Sleep patterns may shift. You may feel bursts of energy late at night, or wake earlier than usual with a sense that something is urging you forward. Even your appetite, your routines, and your desires may change. This isn't random. It is your system adapting to the new frequency it is tuning into. Think of yourself as an instrument. When you raise the key, the strings tighten, and the vibration increases. This can feel uncomfortable, like you are buzzing with a current you can't quite release, but it is simply your energy field recalibrating to keep pace with the reality rushing toward you. In these moments, impatience often surfaces. You sense that something is near, but you can't yet touch it. You know movement is happening, but it hasn't landed into form. This is where faith becomes essential, not in the sense of blind belief, but in the sense of trusting momentum. When a plane accelerates down a runway, it rattles, it shakes, it roars, and for a moment, it seems as though the machine might not hold together. But the passengers do not leap out mid-runway, because they know that speed is the prerequisite for lift. In the same way, the acceleration in your life is not chaos, it is the gathering of energy that will lift you into a higher trajectory. Another aspect of the quickening is the collapse of time between thought and manifestation. What you imagine begins to echo back almost instantly. Think of someone, and they message you. Dream of a scenario, and you stumble into it days later. This is why, during the quickening, self-discipline becomes your greatest ally. The mind no longer has the luxury of casual negativity. A stray worry, a bitter thought, or an old resentment can reverberate into reality quicker than before. This isn't meant to scare you but to remind you that power requires precision. You are now driving a faster vehicle. The steering must be steady. The focus must be deliberate. Otherwise, the speed can overwhelm rather than empower. As acceleration builds, you may also feel waves of inspiration that seem to come from nowhere. Ideas arrive in bursts, solutions present themselves before problems are fully formed, and creative sparks ignite with a frequency that surprises you. The veil between the conscious and the subconscious grows thinner, allowing intuition to flow more freely. This is why keeping a journal or recording these inspirations is so vital. In this stage, insights are like lightning. They strike suddenly and vanish just as quickly if not captured. Many people sabotage this phase by dismissing these flashes as random or insignificant. Yet those flashes are the blueprint of the new reality trying to make itself known through you. Relationships also reflect the quickening. Connections that once dragged with heaviness may suddenly dissolve overnight, while new people may appear almost magically, carrying opportunities, support or wisdom that align perfectly with your path. It can feel strange, almost unreal, how certain doors open as if waiting for your arrival. This is the alignment of timelines at work. The universe orchestrates encounters at this pace because when you are in acceleration, there is less resistance between your intention and the external world. It is as if invisible hands are rearranging circumstances to match your vibration in real time. However, the quickening is not without its challenges. The rapid pace can trigger anxiety. You may feel overwhelmed by the sheer number of changes happening simultaneously. Plans unravel as new opportunities appear, and the stability you once knew may feel distant. This is why surrender becomes so crucial. You cannot control acceleration in the way you controlled stagnation. In stagnation, you push. In acceleration, you allow. You steer with clarity, but do not force the wheel. The energy itself is carrying you, and resistance only exhausts you. Trusting the current becomes your lifeline. Physical sensations often mirror the energetic quickening. You may feel tingling, heat, or pressure in different parts of your body. Some describe it as electricity in their veins, others as a lightness in their chest. These sensations are not symptoms to fear, but signals that your nervous system is adapting to more energy flowing through it. Meditation, grounding practices, and conscious breathing become tools not just for calm but for integration. The body must expand its capacity to hold this speed, and your awareness helps it do so. One of the most profound aspects of the quickening is the realization that reality is not as solid as it once appeared. Events rearrange themselves too perfectly, signs appear too precisely, and timing aligns too effortlessly for you to dismiss it as random. You begin to see that life is pliable, that consciousness is sculpting reality moment by moment, and that you are not a passive observer, but an active participant. This recognition is both liberating and daunting. It means you carry more influence than you believed. It means your role is not to wait for change, but to embody it. The quickening is a bridge. It is the middle space between collapse and arrival. It is the stage where the universe shows you glimpses of what is possible while teaching you the responsibility of alignment. It is thrilling, unnerving, and transformative, all at once. Every moment in this phase is an invitation to sharpen your focus, release your fear, and ride the momentum with grace. It does not last forever, but it leaves an imprint that forever changes how you see time, energy, and creation itself. When you enter the storm of emotions, it doesn't announce itself politely. It arrives suddenly, like a wave that swallows the ground beneath your feet. One moment you feel steady, as though the shift is moving in your favor, and then out of nowhere, emotions you thought you had buried resurface with a force that feels unbearable. Doubts come rushing back. Old wounds you believed you had healed reopen. Fears you thought you had left behind grow louder, as if they are testing the very foundation of your transformation. This is the emotional storm, and it is not a punishment. It is the great cleansing before the crossing. It is here to strip away the layers of resistance, the hidden doubts, the fragile beliefs that cannot travel with you into the new reality. At first it feels like chaos. Your heart feels heavy, your mind runs wild, and the smallest triggers feel like earthquakes shaking your entire being. You may find yourself crying without knowing exactly why, or feeling anger at situations that normally wouldn't disturb you. Some days the storm feels like grief, a mourning for the old life that is slipping away. Other days it feels like fear, as though stepping into the unknown will cost you everything you hold dear. The emotional turbulence is powerful because it strikes not just at your thoughts, but at the very core of your identity. It is as though the universe is asking, who are you when everything you cling to is stripped away? The truth is that most people misunderstand this stage. They think the appearance of pain means something is wrong, that the path has been lost, that they must retreat and return to safety. But the storm is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of progress. The emotions are not obstacles. They are signals. They rise to the surface because they are frequencies that cannot sustain themselves in the vibration of your new reality. Imagine a glass filled with muddy water. If you stir it, the dirt rises to the surface before the water becomes clear. The storm is this stirring. It is uncomfortable. It is messy. But it is absolutely necessary for clarity to emerge. During this stage, the most dangerous response is to fight the emotions, to push them back down, or deny their presence. Suppression only strengthens them, keeping them alive beneath the surface, ready to erupt again. The secret is to allow them to rise, to feel them fully without attaching to them as your identity. When anger appears, you observe it without becoming anger. When fear appears, you acknowledge it without living as fear. This separation is the power that allows you to transcend. You are not the storm. You are the sky that holds it. The clouds may darken, the winds may roar, but the sky itself remains untouched. The storm often brings with it echoes of the past. Memories resurface, old conversations replay in your mind. You may relive situations where you felt rejected, abandoned, or unworthy. These are not punishments but invitations to release what you have carried for too long. It is the subconscious purging its burdens. The reason it feels so intense is because the energy of the old reality is being burned away, and anything that resists that burning will create heat, pressure, and turbulence. The storm is fire disguised as rain. It cleanses even as it feels destructive. As you pass through this stage, you may notice that people around you begin to reflect your storm. Arguments arise, conflicts surface, relationships feel strained. This is not coincidence. The external world mirrors the internal storm, so you can see clearly what has been hidden. The people who trigger you are showing you the very wounds you must heal. Instead of reacting with blame, the storm challenges you to respond with awareness. It is as though the universe has crafted a mirror around you, reflecting every fear and insecurity you have not yet confronted. To break free from the storm, you must break free from the illusions these reflections create. The emotions will come in waves. One day you may feel peace and clarity, only to wake up the next morning drowning in doubt again. This rhythm is natural. It is the pulse of transformation. Each wave carries a new layer of release. The important thing is to trust the process, to understand that every rise and fall is progress. even when it feels like regression. Growth is rarely a straight line. It is a spiral that takes you deeper before it lifts you higher. In the storm, time feels distorted. Minutes stretch into hours when emotions overwhelm you, and days pass in a blur of intensity. You may even feel like you are losing control of your sense of self, but this disorientation is not permanent. It is simply the old timeline losing its grip on your consciousness. As your vibration shifts, the old world can no longer anchor you the way it once did. The turbulence is the friction between the old and the new realities. Once the old finally dissolves, the storm begins to quiet, and you find yourself in a space of clarity unlike anything you have known before. There is also beauty within the storm, if you learn to see it. Hidden in the chaos are glimpses of your power. You notice that despite the intensity, you survive each wave. Despite the tears, you find moments of unexpected peace. Despite the fear, you still move forward. Every storm teaches you resilience. Every emotion you face proves you are stronger than the illusions of weakness you once believed. The storm shows you not just your pain but your endurance, your capacity to rise even when the winds howl against you. Sometimes in the middle of this turbulence, you will feel like you are about to break. But what is actually breaking is not you. It is the shell of the old you. The fragile identity, built on fear, doubt, and limitation, cannot withstand the intensity of the storm. And so it cracks, it shatters, and it falls apart. Within those cracks, light begins to enter. Within that breaking, the truth of your strength emerges. The storm is not there to destroy you. It is there to destroy what is not truly you. The most powerful thing you can do during this phase is to surrender, not in defeat, but in trust. To let the emotions rise without resistance. To let the storm do its work. To allow the old energies to release fully. Resistance makes the storm longer. Surrender allows it to pass through. Imagine standing in the rain. If you fight it, you exhaust yourself. But if you accept it, you realize it was only water all along. The emotional storm is the same. When you stop resisting, it loses its power to control you. The storm does not mean you are lost. It means you are on the verge of being found. It is the threshold where the old world clings desperately, and the new world waits patiently. It is the point in the journey where most turn back, mistaking intensity for failure, chaos for misdirection. But if you endure, if you stay present, if you trust the process, you discover that the storm is the bridge itself, the passage from one frequency to another, the necessary shaking that ensures nothing false survives the crossing. There comes a point in every transformation where the air feels heavy, almost as though the universe itself is holding its breath, waiting to see what you will do next. This is the threshold, the razor's edge between who you were and who you are becoming, and it rarely arrives in the way you expect. Up until now, you may have felt stretched, broken down, accelerated, and pulled through emotional storms. But this stage is different. It is quieter in its cruelty, sharper in its deception. It feels like life itself conspires against you, in one last desperate attempt to drag you back into the cage you worked so hard to escape. The final test is not just about circumstances. It is about faith. It is about whether you trust the unseen enough to keep walking forward when everything around you screams that you are losing. This stage often disguises itself as loss. The relationship you thought would carry you into the new reality suddenly falls apart. The job you depended on disappears. The opportunity that seemed certain slips away without explanation. It can feel like betrayal, like everything you invested yourself in is being ripped from your hands at the last moment. You may ask yourself, how can this be the path to the new when it feels like I am sinking back into the old? But that is the trap. The final gateway is not meant to comfort you. It is meant to test whether you can see beyond appearances, whether you can anchor yourself in faith when the evidence tells you otherwise. The paradox of this stage is that it is not the circumstances that determine your outcome but your response to them. The universe will present illusions of failure, but they are only mirrors designed to see whether you are still attached to fear. If you collapse under the weight of loss, if you cling to the old structures that are crumbling, you get pulled back into the loop of repeating lessons. But if you can let go, if you can hold steady in the storm and say, "Even here I trust," then the door that has been invisible all along suddenly swings open. It is not about passing a test in the way you passed exams in school. It is about embodying a vibration that proves you are ready for what you asked for. Many people confuse this stage with punishment. They wonder if they did something wrong, if they failed somewhere along the journey. But this is not punishment. It is refinement. It is the universe stripping away the last threads of the old reality that cannot exist in the new. Sometimes that means taking away what you thought you needed most. Sometimes that means confronting the deepest fear you swore you could never face. You may be forced to sit in silence with loneliness, to experience lack, to lose people, to feel the sting of rejection. And yet, beneath the pain, something greater is happening. The old self is being asked to die completely, and death rarely feels gentle. But in that surrender, something new is born. The gateway demands trust in a way you may have never known before. It demands that you hold your vision steady even when your external world seems to crumble. This is the point where many give up, turning back just steps before their breakthrough. They choose fear because fear feels safer than uncertainty. But those who walk through know the secret. The test is never about the thing you lost, but about whether you will allow loss to define you. If you can let the illusion pass, if you can walk blindfolded into the unknown with faith as your only compass, you discover that nothing real is ever lost. What falls away at this stage is only what was not aligned to the higher version of you. The relationships that end were never meant to survive the new frequency. The opportunities that vanish were too small for the path you are stepping into. The rejections were redirections, and the closed doors were disguising the ones that are about to open. It is at this stage that courage becomes your currency, not the courage of grand gestures or heroic battles, but the quiet, steady courage of showing up when your heart feels broken. The courage of waking up one more day and choosing to trust even when your bank account, your relationships, or your health seem to be against you. The courage of standing still in the fire without running back to old habits for comfort. This courage cannot be faked, and it cannot be borrowed from anyone else. It is born in the moment you decide that fear will not dictate your path anymore. The final test also reveals itself through timing. Often it comes when you least expect it, when you feel you are finally stable, finally safe. That is why it feels cruel, because it pulls the rug out from under you, right when you thought the struggle was over. But in truth, it is mercy. It is the universe making sure that when you step into the new reality, you do not carry the baggage of doubt and fear with you. Imagine if you manifested everything you asked for while still carrying those old wounds and insecurities. You would sabotage the blessing before it even had the chance to unfold. The final test clears the residue, so that you enter the new with clean hands and an unshakable heart. Those who have walked this path before you will tell you that on the other side of this stage, life feels different. They remember the nights of despair, the days when everything seemed hopeless. They remember thinking it was over, that they had failed, that they had lost too much to continue. And then, as if by magic, a shift occurred, not because the circumstances changed first, but because something inside them broke open. They stopped resisting. They stopped clinging. They stopped demanding answers, and instead surrendered to the unknown. And in that surrender, they walked through the invisible doorway. What looked like the end was actually the beginning disguised. The key to navigating this stage is perspective. If you can see the so-called failures and losses as illusions, if you can remind yourself that this is a passage, not a punishment, you begin to move differently. You stop fighting the current, and instead allow it to carry you forward. You recognize that the pain you feel is not evidence of abandonment, but of transformation. Like a snake shedding its skin, like a seed breaking open in the dark soil, the discomfort is necessary for rebirth. It does not mean you are broken. It means you are becoming. You may notice at this stage that your old coping mechanisms return to tempt you. The urge to retreat into old habits, to numb yourself, to cling to familiar patterns even if they hurt, becomes strong. That too is part of the test. Will you go back to what once kept you safe, or will you step into the uncertainty of the unknown? The old self will try to convince you that safety lies in repetition, in control, in holding on. But the truth is that safety has never come from control. Safety comes from alignment, from trusting the flow of life even when it feels like chaos. Passing this stage is about remembering that the universe has never failed to carry you forward before, and it will not fail now. When the storm passes and the tests are endured, something subtle begins to unfold. There is no sudden explosion of light or dramatic moment of revelation. Instead, it is almost as though life itself sighs and rearranges itself quietly around you. What once felt unreachable is suddenly within reach, yet it does not feel foreign. It feels as though it was always meant to be there, waiting for the moment you were aligned enough to receive it. The arrival into a new reality is not about fireworks or celebration. It is about a deep inner knowing that something has shifted forever. This shift is not loud. It is not boastful. It is not even obvious to the outside world. It is quiet, almost like the dawn creeping over the horizon, transforming the darkness into light without fanfare. You begin to notice that things which used to feel difficult are now effortless. Conversations flow with greater ease. Opportunities come to you without force, and doors open in places where you used to see only walls. The synchronicities that once startled you now feel like the natural rhythm of life. What you were striving for is no longer something you are chasing. It is simply part of who you are. The new reality becomes a mirror reflecting back the person you have become, and it feels natural because it matches the vibration you carry. In this stage, the greatest surprise is how ordinary it feels. There is no longer a dramatic separation between the extraordinary and the everyday. The miraculous becomes the baseline. You wake up and what once felt impossible, peace, abundance, clarity, or love, is just present, woven into your daily existence as if it had always been there. The human mind often imagines transformation as a grand spectacle, but in truth, the most profound shifts are quiet. They settle into your bones like a calm truth, undeniable and steady. It is in this quiet arrival that you realize why the earlier stages were so chaotic. The shattering, the acceleration, the turbulence, the testing, they were all necessary to strip away the density that would not fit into this new space. If you had carried your old fears, doubts, and patterns into this reality, it would not have been able to stabilize. The quietness is the sign that integration is occurring. Your system is no longer fighting, no longer resisting, no longer searching desperately for proof. Instead, it is resting in the truth of a new identity. People around you may not even notice what has changed. To them, you may appear the same, but your experience of life is entirely different. Where you used to feel blocked, now you feel flow. Where you once saw limitations, now you see pathways. The external may not transform overnight, but your perception has, and that perception is the key that changes everything. Because when you perceive differently, you act differently, and when you act differently, the reality around you reshapes itself to match. This is the silent revolution happening within, the kind of revolution that cannot be undone. This arrival also carries with it a sense of inevitability. You understand that the version of you standing in this new space was always meant to emerge. The struggles you endured no longer feel like punishments, but initiations. You see how every challenge served to refine you, to make you strong enough to hold this frequency. There is a quiet gratitude that fills your heart, not the explosive joy of a sudden victory, but the steady appreciation of one who has walked a long road and finally come home. The beauty of this stage lies in its simplicity. You no longer have to strive or struggle to prove anything. You are no longer waiting for a sign, because you are living the sign. Your very existence in this new reality is proof of what is possible. It is no longer about chasing evidence. It is about embodying truth. And because you are aligned, the external world begins to naturally reorganize itself around you. Without force, without control, without desperate effort, things begin to align in ways you could not have calculated. This quiet arrival is also a test of patience. The mind may expect immediate external fireworks, sudden wealth, instant recognition, miraculous changes visible to all, but the quantum field works differently. The external shifts in subtle ways at first, like ripples spreading out across a pond. You notice small adjustments, like the right person calling at the right time, or an opportunity appearing out of nowhere. These are confirmations, not of what is to come but of what is already here. With each ripple, the new reality becomes more tangible, more undeniable, more stabilized. The most profound part of this stage is that you no longer question whether or not it is happening. The doubt is gone. The fear is quiet. The need for external validation is silenced. You simply know. And that knowing itself becomes the magnetic force that continues to draw the right circumstances into your path. You are no longer chasing the shift. You are walking in it. The extraordinary is no longer a distant dream. It is the ground beneath your feet. There is a deep sense of peace that accompanies this stage. Not the fleeting peace that comes from temporary relief, but the kind of peace that is born from alignment. It is steady, unwavering, not shaken by small disturbances. Even when challenges appear, they are no longer threatening, because you see them as part of the natural flow rather than as obstacles. You are no longer thrown off course because the new reality is not fragile. It is anchored within you. This quiet arrival is often misunderstood. To someone still in the chaos of transformation, it might appear uneventful. They might expect to see dramatic signs or huge external shifts. But those who have experienced it know that the greatest evidence of arrival is how naturally life begins to feel. There is no need to announce it, no need to prove it, no need to dramatize it. You are simply living in alignment, and that in itself is the miracle. And as you walk further into this reality, you begin to understand that this is not the end, but a beginning. The arrival is not a final destination, it is a doorway. What you once thought was impossible has now become normal, and from this place of normalcy, new possibilities begin to unfold. This is the beauty of expansion. Once a new baseline is set, life will always invite you to grow further. But unlike before, you no longer fear the process. You trust it. You have walked through the storms, endured the tests, and found your way to this quiet arrival. And because of that, you now know that every future leap will be guided by the same quiet certainty. When you step into the new reality, you begin to notice that the way you interact with life is no longer based on striving or effort, but on a natural embodiment of who you have become. You are no longer chasing the next breakthrough because the breakthrough has already taken place within you. The energy you once spent trying to prove yourself, trying to manifest, trying to fix what you thought was broken, is now redirected into the simple act of living. Every breath you take feels aligned, every action flows with a quiet sense of certainty, and every choice you make resonates with the truth of your higher self. You have crossed the bridge, and now you are learning to walk steadily in this new land, where the extraordinary feels ordinary and the miraculous is woven into your daily existence. It begins with subtle realizations. The conversations that once triggered you no longer hold power over your emotions. The situations that used to drain your energy now seem almost invisible, as if they cannot find a place to anchor themselves within your field. You start to notice that people respond differently to you, not because they have changed, but because your vibration has. They feel something in your presence, a calmness, a steadiness, a quiet confidence that doesn't need to shout or prove itself. This is the essence of living as the higher self. You are not trying to convince the world of who you are, you simply are. Daily life becomes the training ground for integration. It is in the small, almost unnoticed moments that you realize the shift has taken hold. Waking up in the morning, there is no longer a heaviness about what must be done. Instead, there is a quiet gratitude for being alive in this new frequency. Tasks that once felt burdensome are approached with clarity and ease. Even the challenges that arise are no longer seen as threats, but as opportunities to embody more deeply the truth of who you are. Your relationship with time itself begins to shift. It doesn't control you the way it once did. You find yourself moving with the rhythm of life rather than racing against it. There is also a profound shift in the way you perceive yourself. You are no longer identified with the old wounds, the old labels, or the old roles that once defined you. The story of who you were loses its weight, as if the universe has gently erased the hold it once had on your consciousness. You might remember the pain, the struggles, the storms you endured, but they feel like distant echoes, lessons rather than chains. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself or justify your path to anyone. You stand as the living evidence of transformation, and that is enough. Integration also brings with it a deeper connection to intuition. The inner voice that once seemed faint or inconsistent now speaks with clarity and authority. Decisions no longer require endless analysis or external validation. You simply know. It feels like a current pulling you in the right direction. And when you follow it, doors open effortlessly. This doesn't mean you never face uncertainty, but the uncertainty no longer creates fear. It becomes an invitation to trust more deeply, to step into the unknown with faith, knowing that the path will reveal itself as you walk it. Relationships take on a new dimension. Some may fall away not out of anger or rejection, but because they no longer resonate with your frequency. At first this can feel like loss, but soon you realize it is simply the natural sorting of energies. Those who are meant to walk with you in this new reality will remain, and those who are not will drift to where their energy belongs. The connections that remain grow deeper, more authentic, more aligned. You find yourself surrounded by people who see you for who you are becoming, rather than who you were. Conversations shift from surface-level exchanges to soul-level connections. Even in silence, you feel a sense of belonging, because your energy is aligned with the truth of your higher self. There is also a redefinition of success. What once looked like achievement through struggle now feels like alignment through presence. You stop measuring your worth by external milestones, and instead begin to value the inner state of being you carry into every moment. Success becomes about how fully you are living your truth, how deeply you are embodying love, peace, and purpose, rather than how many boxes you have checked. This shift allows you to move through life without the weight of comparison or the pressure of competition. You realize there is no race, no finish line, only the unfolding of your unique path and perfect timing. In this new space, creativity flows effortlessly. Ideas come not from stress or desperation, but from inspiration and alignment. You find yourself creating simply because it feels natural, not because you are trying to prove something or meet an expectation. Your work, your art, your contributions to the world carry a different energy, an energy of authenticity, joy, and service. People feel it, even if they cannot explain it. They are drawn to the vibration behind what you do, because it resonates with something higher within themselves. Living as the higher self also means you are no longer defined by fear. Fear may still whisper, but it no longer dictates your choices. Doubt may still appear, but it no longer paralyzes you. Instead, you acknowledge these voices as remnants of the old self, shadows that no longer have substance. You thank them for their presence, and then you move forward anyway. This courage is not loud or dramatic. It is steady, quiet, and unshakable. It comes from knowing who you are at the deepest level, from standing in the truth that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. Perhaps the most profound aspect of integration is the realization that you are not separate from the universe. You begin to see yourself as part of the greater whole, a thread in the vast tapestry of existence. The boundaries between you and life blur, and you feel the interconnectedness of all things. This doesn't make you detached from the world. It makes you more present within it. You walk through life with compassion, with awareness, with the understanding that every choice you make ripples outward into the collective. This responsibility doesn't weigh you down. It empowers you. You live with intention, knowing that your very presence is a gift to the world. There is also a deep sense of peace that arises, not because everything in life is perfect, but because you no longer need it to be. You have stopped fighting against what is, and started flowing with it. Challenges still come, but you face them with a calm strength, knowing that they too are part of the path. The highs and lows of life become less extreme, because you have found the still point within yourself. This inner equilibrium is the true marker of integration, the sign that you are no longer swayed by every wave but anchored in the ocean of your higher self. As days turn into weeks and weeks into months, you realize that this integration is not a one-time event but an ongoing process. You are continually deepening, continually embodying, continually expanding into new layers of your higher self. Every moment becomes an opportunity to align more fully, to live more authentically, to shine more brightly. You are no longer waiting for the future to deliver your destiny. You are living it here and now, in every breath, in every step, in every heartbeat.